Maid Cafés. The place where master-subject behavior isn't only allowed, it is encouraged, where fancily dressed ladies welcome you with open arms and heart-shaped fingers. But what are these cute and cozy looking buildings often referred to as maid cafés?
お帰りなさいませ、ご主人様、お嬢様。ラベンダー畑から蝶々に乗ってきました。スーパープレミアムメイドのチムです。
Well, maid cafés are a type of cosplay cafe where the servers are dressed as, well, maids. But the choice of apparel isn't the only thing these maid cafés have going for them. As a customer, you will oftentimes be referred to as master if you're a male or lady if you're a female. And instead of welcoming you in when you arrive, they actually welcome you home, as if you were the master of the household coming home to be pampered by your loyal army of maids. I can see the appeal, and so did plenty of other like-minded individuals, seeing as maid cafés have only grown in numbers since their inception. But how did they start? Well, the earliest form of restaurants implemented traditional style clothing that resemble maid's uniform was in 1911 in Kawaii in the Ginza district in Chuo, Tokyo. This restaurant was known to hire beautiful younger women and placing them in traditional style clothing and aprons, walking around taking orders. And while that sounds normal to you and me, back in the day in Japan, the cafe type restaurants were known for selling sex to your average folk. This period, known as the erogrotesque nonsense, was nowhere to be found in this establishment. However, Café Ryan was never called a maid cafe and was just known as a cafe-style restaurant that had well-dressed waitresses. A few years afterwards, in 1960, Stan Miller opened a series of chain restaurants in America known as Anna Miller, who were named after his grandmother. These restaurants were known for their female waitresses who wore very appealing clothing based on the German dirndl, a traditional piece of clothing that is popular during the Oktoberfest and is known to accentuate the breast area of the girls that wear them. Of course, this combination of Western culinary arts and girls wearing these types of clothing would do very well in Japan. So in 1973, the first Anna Miller opened in Aoyama. Anna Miller spread like wildfire and became quite a popular establishment within Japan. So popular in fact that the Imuraya Group, the company that helped bring Anna Miller to Japan, acquired the full trademarks of the company in Japan, so that they can grow the company in their own way. Mistakenly making people think the company's roots are Japanese, while it's actually an American-based company. But again, Anna Miller wasn't known and or named as a maid cafe. However, a lot of pop culture did take inspiration from this popular chain within their character designs, mimicking the unique dress code the restaurant is known for. Some examples of media franchises taking examples of this chain were the video game and eventually anime spin-off of Variable Geo, a fighting game where the main character Yuka dresses in the same style of clothing. Several anime like Oh My Goddess and the movie Rollin' Z actually reference this cafe by name by having one of the main characters work there. And last but not least, there's a visual novel named Welcome to Paya Carrot, a story set in a restaurant where the characters dress up in, you guessed it, German-style dirndls. This visual novel was especially relevant for the future of maid cafés because in 1989 during the Tokyo Character Show to promote the Paya Carrot game series, they started to dress their booth babes in maid outfits, turning them into waitresses just like how the game depicts them. This was a huge success. So successful in fact that they rented out a popular corner in Akihabara to continue these types of maid cafés for a limited time only as the Payakaro restaurant. In 2000 a permanent operation was started in the same location called Café de Cospa, however that was more of a cosplay cafe since it didn't stick with the maid theme from Payacarrot, but also to characters from other series. Only in 2001 when the management of the current building was transferred to the Cospa Group and the license of the cafe was renewed, and this time the uniforms of the waitresses were unified into a maid uniform, changing the name of the establishment into the now famous Cure Maid Café, becoming the first actual permanent maid cafe to grace the earth, and of course it was in the heart of Akihabara. As the very first maid cafe by name, Cure Maid Café is known as one of the holy places in otaku culture, being referenced in several types of media by name. And unlike many of the previously mentioned establishments, Cure Maid Café is still operating till this very day under the same name. And afterwards, maid cafés just started to pop up one after the other. They were so popular that even some maid cafés got their own idol groups. In 2005, during the so-called maid café boom, the You Can Buzzword contest, a contest held every year celebrating the Japanese language by picking a popular modern term from that year and turning that into an award, giving it to a person or group that represents that word the most. And the maid idol group by the name of Complete Maid Declaration won the award for being the most Moe. Now, explaining Moe would probably require its own video, but let's just say that being the embodiment of Moe is probably the highest honor when it comes to being cute. In 2006, there are now over 30 maid cafes in Akihabara alone, with more spreading to other districts and cities in Japan, South Korea and China as well. In 2013, even the first American maid cafe opened, aptly named Maid Cafe NY. With the spread of maid cafes around the world, you'd think maid cafes are heading to space with no one to stop them. But it's not quite the true story. America only has a handful of maid cafes, and worldwide, most countries don't even have one maid cafe. Even in Japan, outside of Akihabara, they are quite rare. While the idea of maid cafe is novel, not everyone wants that experience. While its popularity during the early 2000s was meteoric, most of the popularity came from it being a new thing. Its main audience, Japanese otakus, are only a small subsection of Japan. And while opening a maid cafe isn't an immediate death sentence these days, you have to keep in mind your target audience. If the area doesn't have enough of these maid-loving otakus, there's a big chance the business won't thrive. And while Akihabara is known as the otaku heaven, if too many maid cafes open up in a single place, the once niche business will become oversaturated and you start to competing with your neighbor for only a limited amount of customers. Now, in 2023, over 200 maid cafes are open in Japan, meaning that the demand is still rising and it's still a lot of maid cafes in total, but not as much as they once thought back in 2005. And with the new era of foreign YouTubers talking about maid cafes, maybe the 2020s will be the rise of maid cafes once again. Now, despite it not literally conquering the world as of yet, maid cafes have conquered Japanese media for quite a while now. Even before the term maid cafe was an actual thing. Your fighting games, eroge and anime depicting girls serving food in maid cafe, like the ones mentioned before, have existed way before Cure Maid Cafe. But after it actually became a thing in 2001, it started to become a trope in anime to put as many maids in there as possible. Especially when you need to make a quick design for a background character serving food, most of the time maids are used for that. Oftentimes now we also get animes that are just about maid cafes. Think of Blend S, Akihabara Maid Wars, Soremachi, Maid-sama, Hinako Note. With anime, light novel and manga more focusing on maids are also rising in both popularity and being produced in recent years. Think of the popularity of Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, where even the concept of maid cafe comes up a lot, with the main characters being maids. Speaking of, if I got $1 for every time I've seen a Dragon Maid, I would have $2. Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right? Anyway, even if all the maid cafes disappeared off the face of the earth, Japan will still and forever make media revolving around maids. And I hope that with this video you learned a thing or two about maid culture of Japan and the rise and stagnation of maid cafes. And if you did learn a bit, throw your apron at the subscribe button and stay up to date and learn more and more about the interesting world of Japan. I'm Durkorn and thank you for watching.